What is between your legs? Can I touch it? The blunt question pierced the air, shattering the carefully constructed veneer of diplomacy. Henry Perry, Earth's chosen envoy, froze mid-step on the ramp of his spacecraft, his mind reeling from the unexpected inquiry. The alien world of Kazonia stretched before him, its purple sky and twin moons a stark reminder of how far from home he truly was. The delegation of Kazan officials stood at the base of the ramp, their elongated bodies and iridescent skin a testament to their alien nature. At the forefront stood Kraxon, a female Kazan whose beauty was as striking as it was foreign. Henry's heart raced as he realized the magnitude of the cultural chasm he faced. The peace negotiations between Earth and the Kazan species, crucial for humanity's survival, teetered on the brink of collapse before they had even begun. The Kazan, with their limited knowledge of human anatomy, had never encountered bipedal creatures. Their curiosity, while natural, threatened to unravel months of careful preparation. Sweat beaded on Henry's forehead as he struggled to form a response. The weight of Earth's future pressed down on him. In orbit, military leaders watched with bated breath, their fingers hovering over controls that could unleash Earth's meager defenses against the technologically superior Kazan fleet. This meeting was humanity's last chance at securing a peaceful alliance, and it was rapidly descending into chaos. Kraxon's multifaceted eyes studied Henry intently, her head tilted in genuine curiosity. The other Kazan officials shifted uncomfortably, interpreting Henry's hesitation as potential hostility or deception. The air crackled with tension as the silence stretched on. Finally, Henry cleared his throat. That's a rather personal question where I come from, he managed, his diplomatic training kicking in despite the shock. Perhaps we could discuss human anatomy in a more appropriate setting? Kraxon's antenna twitched, a sign of interest that Henry had yet to learn to interpret. Her reaction to his words sparked a realization within her. There was more to these humans than the Kazan had initially believed. As she opened her mouth to respond, Henry caught a flicker of movement in the shadows behind the delegation. Unknown to both parties, a group of Kazan extremists watched from the darkness, their eyes filled with hatred. To them, humans represented a threat to their way of life, and they were determined to sabotage the peace talks at any cost. Their plan to assassinate Henry and frame it as a diplomatic incident was already in motion, the wheels of potential interstellar war beginning to turn. As the alien sun began to set, casting long shadows across the spaceport, Henry realized that navigating this diplomatic minefield would require every ounce of his skill and humanity's renowned adaptability. The stakes were clear: maintain human dignity while appeasing Kazan curiosity, or risk plunging both species into a conflict that could spell doom for Earth. With a deep breath, Henry stepped forward, extending a hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Let's start over," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm Henry Perry, and I'm here to build a bridge between our peoples. There's a lot we can learn from each other, if we're willing to keep an open mind." As Kraxon hesitantly reached out to reciprocate the gesture, Henry couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a perilous journey, one that would test the limits of human ingenuity, diplomacy, and courage in the face of the unknown. As the alien sun rose over Kazonia, its purple hues painting the sky in ethereal shades, Henry Perry found himself summoned to an emergency meeting with the Kazan High Council. The events of the previous day still greatly troubled on his mind as he made his way through the winding corridors of the council building, its organic architecture a constant reminder of the vast differences between human and Kazan cultures. Upon entering the council chamber, Henry's eyes immediately fell on Kraxon, her iridescent skin shimmering under the bioluminescent lights. The familiar flutter of discomfort rose in his chest as he recalled their awkward first encounter, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the gravity of the situation at hand. The council members, their elongated bodies draped in ornate robes, regarded Henry with a mixture of curiosity and concern. The lead counselor, a wizened Kazan with intricate patterns etched into his exoskeleton, spoke in a low, resonant tone. "Ambassador Perry, we have received disturbing intelligence. A radical faction seeks to sabotage our peace talks. For your safety, we have assigned Kraxon as your personal bodyguard." Henry's eyebrows rose involuntarily. He glanced at Craxon, who stood at attention, her multifaceted eyes unreadable. The lead counselor continued, "We've intercepted communications suggesting an imminent threat to your life. Craxon is our most capable warrior. She will ensure your protection." Swallowing his initial hesitation, Henry nodded. "I appreciate your concern and the measures you're taking to ensure my safety. I assure you, Earth remains committed to these peace talks, regardless of any threats we may face." As the meeting concluded and Henry prepared to leave with Craxon, a deafening explosion rocked the building. Without thinking, Henry lunged towards Craxon, shielding her with his body as debris rained down around them. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air, and panicked shouts echoed through the chamber. "Are you all right?" Henry asked, his voice hoarse from the dust. Craxon's antenna twitched in what Henry was beginning to recognize as surprise. "I am unharmed. Your reflexes are impressive." As they scrambled to their feet, Henry realized they had become separated from the main group in the chaos. The once Grand Council chamber now lay in ruins, twisted metal and shattered stone blocking their path. "We need to find a way out," Henry said, surveying the damage. He spotted a narrow opening in the debris and moved towards it, using his strength to shift a heavy beam. "This way!" Craxon watched with fascination as Henry navigated the treacherous terrain, his agility and quick thinking allowing them to make steady progress through the damaged structure. As they emerged into a smoke-filled corridor, Henry's ears picked up the sound of approaching footsteps. "Someone's coming," he whispered, pulling Craxon into a shadowy alcove. A group of armed Kazan extremists rounded the corner, their weapons at the ready. Henry's mind raced, assessing the situation. Drawing on his military training, he waited for the perfect moment to strike. As the first extremists passed their hiding spot, Henry burst into action. In a fluid motion, he disarmed the surprised Kazan, using an unfamiliar grappling technique that left his opponent stunned on the ground. Craxon, shaking off her initial shock, quickly joined the fray, her knowledge of Kazan weaponry proving invaluable as they worked in tandem to subdue the attackers. With the immediate threat neutralized, Henry turned his attention to gathering information. Using a combination of firm questioning and diplomatic finesse, he managed to extract crucial details from one of the captured extremists. "They believe we have a secret weapon," Henry relayed to Craxon, his brow furrowed in concern. "Something capable of destroying entire planets. That's why they're so desperate to stop these talks." Craxon's antenna quivered. "Is this true? Does Earth possess such devastating power?" Henry shook his head. "No, it's a misunderstanding. They must have heard exaggerated stories about our nuclear capabilities. We need to correct this misconception before it leads to further violence." As they continued their escape, Henry's communicator crackled to life. The voice of Admiral Steele, commander of Earth's orbital fleet, came through, tense and urgent. "Perry, we've received word of the attack. We're preparing to intervene. What's your status?" Henry's response was immediate and firm. "Hold your positions, Admiral. We can still salvage this diplomatically. Any military action now could jeopardize everything we've worked for." He could almost hear the Admiral's frown through the comm link. "Understood, but be advised. If we lose contact with you for more than 6 hours, we'll be forced to take action." As Henry signed off, he noticed Craxon studying him intently. "Your people would delay military action based solely on your word?" "Trust goes both ways," Henry replied. "If we want the Kazan to believe in our peaceful intentions, we need to demonstrate restraint." Their path soon led them to an ancient Kazan temple, its massive stone doors offering the promise of sanctuary. As they slipped inside, Henry's eyes widened at the sight before them. The temple walls were covered in intricate carvings, depicting scenes that seemed impossible. Kazan and human-like figures standing side by side. "This can't be," Craxon whispered, her voice filled with awe. "These images, they suggest contact between our peoples thousands of years ago." Henry ran his fingers over the ancient stone, his legs shaking at the implications. "This changes everything. If we can prove a shared history between humans and Kazan, it could be the key to lasting peace." As night fell, they realized they were trapped in the temple, surrounded by extremist forces. Henry's mind kicked into high gear, assessing their resources and formulating a plan. Using broken pillars and ancient tapestries, he began constructing makeshift barricades. "What are you doing?" Craxon asked, watching him work. "Improving our defenses," Henry explained, demonstrating how to reinforce weak points. "We might not have advanced technology, but human ingenuity has gotten us out of tight spots before." As they worked side by side, Craxon's curiosity about humans seemed to reignite. When Henry winced while lifting a heavy stone, she noticed a cut on his arm. "You're injured," she said, approaching him with what appeared to be a medicinal plant. "Allow me." As Craxon tended to his wound, her touch careful and precise, Henry found himself answering her questions about human biology more openly. He explained the basics of human anatomy, careful to maintain a respectful, scientific tone. Craxon listened intently, her preconceptions about humans visibly shifting. "Your species is far more complex than we initially believed," she admitted. "Perhaps there is much we could learn from each other." As dawn approached, Henry outlined his plan to Craxon. "We need to expose the truth about human capabilities to your people," he explained. "If we can dispel these myths, we might be able to prevent further violence and save the peace talks." Craxon nodded, her earlier skepticism replaced by a growing respect for human diplomatic approaches. "I will help you," she said. "Together, we may yet forge a new path for both our peoples." As they prepared to face the challenges ahead, Henry couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Despite the danger that surrounded them, the seeds of understanding between humans and Kazon had been planted. Now, they just had to nurture them into something strong enough to withstand the storms that were sure to come. As the first rays of the alien sun pierced through the temple's ancient windows, Henry and Craxon stirred from their makeshift barricades. The night had passed without incident, but the danger was nowhere near the end. They exchanged a glance, both acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead. "We need to reach the High Council," Henry said, his voice low and determined. "It's our best chance to expose the truth and stop this conflict before it escalates further." Craxon nodded, her antenna twitching in agreement. "I know a way through the city that should minimize our exposure to extremist patrols. Follow me closely." As they emerged from the temple, the chaotic streets of the Kazan capital sprawled before them. The aftermath of the previous day's attack was evident in the twisted metal and shattered stone that littered the roadways. Smoke still rose from several buildings, and the distant sound of alarms echoed through the air. Henry and Craxon moved swiftly, ducking into alleyways and using the debris as cover. Craxon's knowledge of the city proved invaluable as she led them through a maze of back streets and abandoned thoroughfares. Henry's military training kicked in, his eyes constantly scanning for threats as they navigated the urban battlefield. As they rounded a corner, a loud crash and a chorus of panicked cries caught their attention. A nearby building had partially collapsed, trapping a group of civilian Kazans beneath the rubble. Without hesitation, Henry sprinted toward the scene. "We have to help them," he called back to Craxon, who followed close behind. Arriving at the collapsed structure, Henry quickly assessed the situation. The trapped Kazans were pinned beneath a fallen support beam, their elongated bodies contorted in pain and fear. Henry's mind raced, calculating angles and leverage points. "We need to create a fulcrum," he explained to Craxon, grabbing a piece of broken metal. "Help me wedge this under the beam." Working together, they positioned the makeshift lever. Henry strained against the weight, his muscles burning with effort. Slowly, agonizingly, the beam began to lift. Craxon's eyes widened as she watched Henry's display of raw physical strength. "Now," Henry grunted, "get them out!" Craxon sprang into action, helping the trapped Kazans crawl to safety. As the last one emerged, Henry let the beam drop with a resounding thud. He stood there panting and covered in dust as the rescued Kazans gathered around him. One of them, an elder with intricate patterns etched into his exoskeleton, approached Henry. "You risked your life for us," he said, his voice filled with awe. "We were told humans were selfish creatures, concerned only with conquest. But you have shown us differently." Henry nodded, still catching his breath. "We're not so different, you and I. When people are in danger, we help. It's what makes us, well, people. As they continued their journey, Craxton's gaze lingered on Henry. She found herself noticing things she hadn't before. The determined set of his jaw, the careful way he moved through the rubble, the kindness in his eyes when he spoke to the rescued Kazons. These observations stirred unfamiliar feelings within her, ones she couldn't quite name. Their path led them to an abandoned Kazon military outpost. The building's exterior was scorched and pitted, evidence of recent conflict. Henry approached cautiously, signaling for Craxton to watch their backs. Inside, they discovered a room filled with advanced communication equipment. The alien technology hummed softly, its displays flickering with strange symbols and patterns. Henry's eyes lit up with curiosity and grit. "This could be our chance to contact the Earth delegation," he said, moving towards the control panel. Craxton watched in fascination as Henry's fingers danced over the unfamiliar controls. His brow furrowed in concentration as he deciphered the Kazon interface, applying his knowledge of Earth technologies to this alien system. Within minutes, he had established a connection. "Admiral Steele, do you read me?" Henry's voice crackled through the comms system. The response came swiftly, filled with relief. "Perry, thank God. What's your status?" Henry quickly updated the Admiral on their situation, explaining the misinformation about Earth's capabilities and the extremist threat. "We're heading to the High Council now. Hold your position and maintain radio silence unless absolutely necessary. We can still salvage this diplomatically." As Henry signed off, Craxton stared at him, her antenna quivering with a mix of emotions. "Your ability to adapt to our technology is remarkable," she said softly. Henry smiled, a hint of pride in his voice. "Humans have always been good at figuring things out on the fly. It's how we've survived this long." Their moment of respite was short-lived. Outside, the whir of robotic drones filled the air. Henry peered through a cracked window, spotting the sleek metallic form scanning the area. "Looks like Zargax and his extremists have stepped up their game," Henry muttered. "We need to move." What followed was a tense game of cat and mouse through the city streets. Henry's tactical mind worked overtime, using the urban environment to their advantage. They ducked under low-hanging wires that scrambled the drone's sensors, used reflective surfaces to create false heat signatures. And at one point, Henry even reprogrammed a damaged drone to send false information back to its masters. Each successful evasion seemed to impress Craxton more. She found herself drawing closer to Henry, her protective instincts flaring whenever danger approached. When a drone nearly spotted them, she pulled Henry into a narrow alcove, their bodies pressed close together. The proximity sent an unfamiliar tingle through her exoskeleton. As they neared the High Council building, the scale of the extremist presence became clear. A fortified blockade stretched across the main avenue, jam-packed with weapons and guards. Henry surveyed the scene, his mind already formulating a plan. "We can't go through them," he whispered to Craxton, "but maybe we can go around them. Do you see that power conduit running along the roofline?" Craxton nodded, beginning to understand Henry's thinking. "If we could overload it, it would create a significant distraction." "Exactly," Henry grinned. "And while they're dealing with that, we can slip through that gap in their perimeter." Working quickly, Henry used components from their captured drone to rig up a device that would overload the power system. As he worked, Craxton kept watch, her admiration for Henry's ingenuity growing with each passing moment. The plan worked perfectly. As the power conduit exploded in a shower of sparks, chaos erupted among the extremist forces. Henry and Craxton seized their opportunity, sprinting through the gap in the defenses. They were nearly clear when a shout went up. "Stop them!" Henry whirled around to see a group of Kazon military officers approaching, weapons raised. He tensed, ready for a fight, but Craxton placed a hand on his arm. "Wait," she said. "I recognize their leader. It's Commander Vex. He's known for his moderate views." Henry straightened, adopting a diplomatic posture. "Commander Vex," he called out, "we're not your enemies. We're here to speak with the High Council and expose the truth about the misinformation being spread about humans." Vex hesitated, his weapon still raised. "Why should we believe you?" Henry took a step forward, his hands open and non-threatening. Because if we wanted conflict, we wouldn't be here trying to talk. We would have brought our fleet and started a war. But that's not who we are. We're here to build bridges, not burn them. His words seemed to resonate with Vex. The commander lowered his weapon, signaling his troops to do the same. "Very well," he said. "I will escort you to the High Council, but be warned, human. Any false move and you will not leave that chamber alive." As they entered the High Council chambers, Henry's heart raced. The fate of human-Kazon relations hung in the balance. The council members turned to face them, their multifaceted eyes reflecting a mix of fear, curiosity, and suspicion. Henry took a deep breath, ready to make his case for peace. But before he could speak, the doors burst open once more. Zargax and his extremist followers poured into the room, weapons drawn. "Death to the human threat!" Zargax roared. In the chaos that followed, Henry's reflexes took over. He dodged a blast from Zargax's weapon, rolling across the floor and coming up next to a stunned council member. In one fluid motion, he pushed the Kazon out of harm's way, an energy bolt sizzling through the air where the counselor had been standing moments before. Craxon leapt into action, her combat training evident as she engaged two extremists at once. Henry moved to assist her, his hand-to-hand skills on full display, as he disarmed one attacker and used the Kazan's own weapon to stun another. Throughout the melee, Henry was careful to use non-lethal force, disabling his opponents rather than killing them. This fact did not go unnoticed by the watching council members, whose expressions began to shift from fear to something closer to respect. As the last extremist fell, Henry stood in the center of the chamber, breathing heavily. He turned to face the High Council, acutely aware that this was his moment to change the course of human-Kazon relations. "Honored council members," he began, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I stand before you not as a threat, but as a potential ally. The stories you've heard about Earth's planet-destroying weapons are false. We are a people of science, of exploration, and yes, of warfare when necessary. But our greatest strength lies not in our weapons, but in our ability to adapt, to learn, and to coexist." He gestured to the subdued extremists. "These individuals sought to sow fear and mistrust between our peoples. But look at what we've accomplished together in just the past day. Craxon and I have worked side by side, saving lives and overcoming obstacles. Commander Vex chose diplomacy over conflict, and just now we defended this council chamber together." Henry's gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of each council member. "We have so much to learn from each other. The ancient temple we discovered suggests our peoples may have a shared history. Imagine what we could accomplish if we face the future together as well." As Henry concluded his impromptu speech, a murmur ran through the council. Craxon stepped forward, standing proudly at Henry's side. Her antenna quivered with an emotion she was only now beginning to understand as she addressed her leaders. "Honored ones," she said, her voice clear and confident. "I have witnessed the true nature of humans through Henry's actions. They are not the monsters we feared, but a species worthy of our respect and alliance." The lead counselor leaned forward, his intricate exoskeleton gleaming in the chamber's light. "You have given us much to consider, Ambassador Perry. Perhaps it is time we reevaluate our position on Earth and its people." As the council began to discuss among themselves, Henry felt a glimmer of hope. He had opened the door to understanding, but he knew the journey was far from finished. Winning over the High Council was just the first step. To secure lasting peace, he would need to change the hearts and minds of the entire Kazon population. Craxon's hand brushed against his, sending a jolt of awareness through him. He turned to find her looking at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. There was so much still to learn about each other, so many bridges yet to build. But for now, in this moment, as the first seeds of peace began to take root, Henry allowed himself a small smile. The real work was just beginning, but for the first time since he'd set foot on this alien world, he truly believed that humans and Kazons could forge a future together among the stars. Stars! As the High Council deliberated, Henry's mind raced with possibilities. He knew they had made progress, but there was still much work to be done to win over the Kazon population at large. An idea began to form in his mind. "Honored Council," Henry said, stepping forward once more. "I propose a public demonstration of human capabilities and intentions. Let us show your people who we truly are, not through words alone, but through actions." The lead counselor's antenna twitched with interest. "Elaborate, Ambassador Perry." Henry outlined his plan for a large-scale event in Kazonia's Central Plaza, showcasing human technology, culture, and abilities. The council members exchanged glances, their compound eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and caution. "It is a bold proposal," the lead counselor said finally. "But perhaps boldness is what we need to quell public fears and expose the extremist misinformation. We will allow this demonstration." With the council's approval secured, Henry, Craxon, and a team of moderate Kazon officials, including Commander Vex, set to work organizing the event. The Central Plaza buzzed with activity as they set up various stations, each designed to highlight a different aspect of human civilization. On the day of the demonstration, Kazons of all castes and social standings filled the plaza, their exoskeletons gleaming in the alien sunlight. Henry took a deep breath, steeling himself for the task ahead. At the first station, Henry showcased Earth's advanced medical technology. A group of injured Kazons, their exoskeletons cracked and leaking vital fluids, were brought forward. Henry activated a portable healing device, its blue light washing over the wounded aliens. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the injuries began to heal before their eyes. Cracks sealed, fluids stopped flowing, and within minutes the Kazons stood fully recovered. A murmur of amazement rippled through the onlookers. "This is but one example of our medical science," Henry explained, his voice amplified for all to hear. "We come not to harm, but to heal, to share knowledge that can benefit all." Moving to the next station, Henry faced a series of physical challenges designed to test the limits of human capabilities. He approached a piece of heavy Kazon mining equipment, its weight far beyond what the aliens believed a human could manage. Henry gripped the machine, muscles straining as he lifted it off the ground. The Kazon's mandibles clicked in surprise as he held it aloft for several seconds before setting it down. Without pausing, Henry launched himself into an obstacle course designed for Kazon physiology, his agility and problem-solving skills on full display as he navigated the alien terrain. As Henry completed the course in record time, a cheer rose from the crowd. He allowed himself a small smile, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Suddenly, screams erupted from the far end of the plaza. A swarm of Zarlik's vicious native creatures with razor-sharp pincers poured into the crowd. Henry's eyes locked with Craxon's, a silent understanding passing between them. "Zargax!" Craxon hissed, her antenna quivering with anger. Henry sprang into action, his voice cutting through the panic. "Commander Vex, we need containment fields." "Craxon, what's the Zarlik's weakness?" As Vex and his team deployed energy barriers, Craxon relayed crucial information about the creature's vulnerabilities. Henry quickly formulated a plan, combining Earth tactics with Kazon knowledge. "Use sonic pulses at this frequency," he instructed, inputting data into a nearby console. "It'll disorient them without harming the crowd." The hybrid strategy worked perfectly. Within minutes, the Zarliks were safely contained and removed from the plaza. The Kazons watched in awe as humans and their own kind worked seamlessly together to neutralize the threat. As calm returned to the plaza, Henry seized the moment to introduce another aspect of human culture: food. He unveiled a spread of Earth cuisines, specially prepared to be safe for Kazon consumption. "Let us share more than just technology and tactics," Henry announced, offering a plate to a nearby Kazon. "Let us break bread together as a symbol of our growing friendship." The alien hesitantly took a bite, then chirped in surprise at the unfamiliar flavors. Soon, Kazons were eagerly sampling the Earth foods, their mandibles working overtime as they experienced new tastes and textures. As the event continued, Henry noticed Craxon deep in thought, her antenna twitching with what he now recognized as nervous energy. She approached him, her compound eyes filled with perseverance. "Henry," she said, her voice low, "I want to address the crowd, to share my experiences with you, with humans. Will you support me?" Henry nodded, feeling a surge of warmth towards his alien companion. "Of course, Craxon. Your voice could make all the difference. Kraxun took center stage, her exoskeleton gleaming under the plaza's lights. As she spoke, recounting her journey from suspicion to trust, Henry watched the crowd's reaction. He saw antennae twitch in interest, mandibles click in agreement, and compound eyes widen in understanding. As Kraxun concluded her impassioned speech, a wave of positive chittering swept through the assembled Kazons. Henry felt a surge of hope. They were making real progress. Inspired by the day's events, the High Council approached Henry with a proposal for cultural exchange programs between Earth and Kazonia. Henry enthusiastically agreed, already envisioning the possibilities for fostering deeper understanding between their species. As the demonstration wound down, Henry felt a sense of accomplishment, but his satisfaction was short-lived as he noticed a group of Kazon scientists approaching, led by a female with intricate patterns etched into her exoskeleton. "Ambassador Perry," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and trepidation. "I am Dr. Zalana. We have a proposal that could further our understanding of your species." Henry listened as Dr. Zalana outlined their request for his participation in a series of medical experiments, including studies of human reproductive capabilities. He felt a flush of embarrassment, remembering the initial awkwardness surrounding human anatomy. As Dr. Zalana spoke, Henry noticed a ripple of reaction spreading through the crowd. Some Kazons nodded in agreement, while others chittered in disapproval. He realized this request had the potential to undo much of the progress they had made. Before Henry could respond, his communication device buzzed. It was a message from Admiral Steele, still monitoring the situation from orbit. The Admiral's words were clear and urgent. "Reject the proposal. Potential security risk. Could lead to bioweapons development." Henry's mind raced, weighing the potential benefits of scientific cooperation against the risks of sharing sensitive biological information. He glanced at Kraxun, seeing the concern in her compound eyes, then back at Dr. Zalana and her team, their antennae quivering with anticipation. The plaza fell silent as all eyes turned to Henry, waiting for his response. He took a deep breath, knowing his next words could shape the future of human-Kazon relations for generations to come. He knew he had to tread carefully. "Dr. Zalana, I appreciate your scientific curiosity," Henry began, his voice measured. "However, I must respectfully decline the more invasive aspects of your proposal. As a representative of Earth, I'm not authorized to share such sensitive biological information." He saw disappointment flicker across the Kazon scientist's compound eyes, her antenna drooping slightly. But before she could protest, Henry continued, "That said, I'm open to participating in non-invasive medical scans and basic physiological tests. Perhaps we can find a middle ground that satisfies your scientific interests while respecting my species' privacy concerns." Dr. Zalana's antenna perked up, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "A compromise, Ambassador. Yes, this could work. We have much to learn even from basic human physiology." Henry nodded, relieved. He glanced at Kraxun, who gave him a subtle gesture of approval. The crowd around them buzzed with excitement at this new development. Over the next few days, Henry found himself in a specially designed medical bay, surrounded by curious Kazon scientists. Their compound eyes gleamed with fascination as they conducted a series of scans, recording data on his cardiovascular system, skeletal structure, and neural patterns. During one session, Dr. Zalana let out a chittering gasp of surprise. "Ambassador, your immune system? It's remarkable. The adaptability, the efficiency. I've never seen anything like it." Henry sat up on the examination table, intrigued. "How so, Doctor?" Dr. Zalana's antenna quivered with excitement as she explained, "Your white blood cells have a unique ability to recognize and adapt to new pathogens. This could be the key to solving several Kazon health issues we've struggled with for generations." The news of this discovery spread quickly through the Kazon scientific community and soon reached the High Council. Henry found himself once again standing before the alien leaders, this time alongside Dr. Zalana and her team. The lead counselor's exoskeleton gleamed as he addressed the assembly. "The potential benefits of human-Kazon cooperation have become clear. To further strengthen our alliance and showcase our combined strengths, we propose a joint scientific mission to explore a nearby uninhabited planet. Henry's pulse quickened at the prospect. He stepped forward. On behalf of Earth, I would be honored to lead the human contingent on such a mission. The counselor's antenna twitched in approval. Excellent! And to represent the Kazon people, we appoint Kraxon as mission commander. Henry turned to Kraxon, seeing his own excitement mirrored in her compound eyes. They had come so far since their first tense encounter, and now they would be embarking on a historic joint mission. As preparations for the expedition began, a flurry of activity consumed the Kazan spaceport. Human and Kazan engineers worked side by side, outfitting their vessel with the latest in combined technology. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation and the promise of new discoveries. Unbeknownst to the busy crews, shadows moved in the darkened corners of the spaceport. Zargax and his extremist followers slipped past security, their antenna twitching with malicious intent. They worked quickly, sabotaging key systems on the mission's primary spacecraft. A maintenance crew, making final checks, noticed some irregularities. They managed to repair a few of the damaged components, but failed to grasp the full extent of the sabotage. The ship was declared fit for launch, its hidden dangers lying in wait. The day of the mission arrived, the spaceport alive with activity. Henry stood at the base of the spacecraft, its sleek hull gleaming in the alien sunlight. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the journey ahead. Kraxon approached, her exoskeleton polished to a high shine for the occasion. "Ready, Ambassador?" she asked, her voice tinged with both excitement and nervousness. Henry nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "As ready as I'll ever be, Commander." They boarded the ship together, joining the mixed team of human and Kazon scientists and security personnel. The launch sequence initiated, and Henry felt the familiar surge of acceleration as they broke free from Kazonia's atmosphere. At first, everything seemed normal. The ship's systems hummed with efficiency as they left the planet behind. But as they entered deep space, alarms began to blare. "Commander!" a Kazan engineer called out, his antenna vibrating with distress. "We're losing power to the main thrusters." Before Kraxon could respond, another system failed, then another. Henry's heart raced as he realized the severity of their situation. "This is sabotage," he declared, moving swiftly to the main control panel. "Kraxon, we need to reroute power from non-essential systems. Can your engineers bypass the damaged circuits?" Kraxon barked orders in her native tongue, her crew scrambling to comply. Henry's fingers flew over the controls, drawing on years of space travel experience to keep them aloft. Despite their best efforts, the ship shuddered and groaned. A Kazan navigator's voice cut through the chaos. "We're being pulled into the gravity well of an uncharted moon." Henry gritted his teeth, taking manual control of the vessel. "Brace for impact," he shouted, guiding the failing ship towards the moon's surface as gently as possible. The landing was rough. Metal screeched against stone as they skidded across the alien terrain. When they finally came to a stop, an eerie silence fell over the ship. Henry pulled himself up, his body aching from the impact. "Status report," he called out, scanning the cabin for injuries. Kraxon's voice responded, shaky but determined. "Minimal casualties, but the ship is severely damaged. We're stranded, Henry." As the reality of their situation sank in, Henry took a deep breath. They were alive, but their troubles were far from finished. With a mix of human ingenuity and Kazon resilience, they would need to find a way to survive on this hostile alien moon and somehow signal for rescue. He met Kraxon's compound eyes, seeing his own purpose reflected there. Together, they would face whatever challenges this strange new world had in store for them. Henry surveyed the crash site, his mind racing with the challenges they faced. The ship's twisted metal frame jutted out against the alien landscape, a stark reminder of their precarious situation. "We need to organize," he announced, addressing the mixed group of humans and Kazons. "Our survival depends on efficient teamwork." Kraxon nodded in agreement, her antenna twitching with nervous energy. "What do you propose, Henry?" "3 teams," Henry said, his voice steady despite the gravity of their situation. Repair, exploration, and security. We'll tackle our most pressing needs simultaneously. As Henry assigned roles, the crew members dispersed to their tasks. The repair team, led by a seasoned human engineer and a Kazon technician, began assessing the damage to the ship's hull and systems. "Ambassador," the human engineer called out, her face grim. "Several critical components are beyond repair with our current resources." Henry's brow furrowed as he examined the damaged parts. Then his eyes lit up with an idea. "The ruins," he said, gesturing to the ancient structures looming in the distance. "We might be able to salvage and adapt parts from the alien technology there." The Kazon engineers chittered excitedly, their compound eyes gleaming with newfound respect for human ingenuity. Meanwhile, Dr. Zalana led the exploration team into the ruins. As they ventured deeper, the alien architecture grew more complex, revealing a vast underground network. "Fascinating," Dr. Zalana murmured, her antenna quivering with excitement. "The level of technological advancement here is extraordinary." Their progress through the ruins was halted by a sealed door, covered in intricate glowing symbols. A human scientist stepped forward, running his hand along the strange markings. "It's some kind of locking mechanism," he said, "but I can't make sense of the patterns." Dr. Zalana clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "Perhaps if we combine our knowledge of xenolinguistics and human pattern recognition." Working together, the human and Kazon scientists deciphered the lock, causing the door to slide open with a deep resonant hum. Beyond lay a chamber housing a pulsating energy source, its power tangible in the air around them. "This could be exactly what we need," Dr. Zalana exclaimed. "With this, we could power the ship and boost our distress signal exponentially." As they approached the energy source, the ground beneath their feet trembled. Suddenly, panels in the wall slid open, revealing rows of dormant drones. "We've triggered some kind of defense system," a human security officer shouted, drawing his weapon. The drones sprang to life, their metallic bodies gleaming as they swarmed towards the exploration team. Dr. Zalana's mandibles clicked rapidly as she called for backup through her communicator. Henry and Craxon rushed to the scene with a mixed team of human and Kazon fighters. As they entered the chamber, Henry assessed the situation quickly. "Craxon, have your team focus fire on the drones to the left," he ordered. "We'll take the right flank. Watch for patterns in their attacks." The battle that ensued was a testament to the strengths of both species. Human fighters demonstrated remarkable adaptability, quickly identifying and exploiting weaknesses in the drones' attack patterns. Meanwhile, Kazon energy weapons provided devastating firepower, cutting through the drone's armor with precision. In the heat of the fight, Henry noticed a drone sneaking up behind Craxon. Without hesitation, he threw himself at her, pushing her out of harm's way. The drone's energy blast grazed his shoulder, leaving a painful burn. "Henry!" Craxon cried out, her compound eyes wide with concern. As the last of the drones fell, Craxon helped Henry to his feet, supporting his weight with her strong exoskeleton. She led him to a quiet corner of the chamber, away from the others. "You saved me," she said softly, her antenna gently brushing against his uninjured arm. Henry winced as he tried to smile. "We're in this together, aren't we?" Craxon's mandibles clicked softly as she examined his wound. She reached for her med kit, combining Kazon healing salves with human bandages to treat the injury. As she worked, Henry couldn't help but notice the gentleness of her touch, so at odds with her alien appearance. Their moment was interrupted by an urgent message from the security team at the crash site. "Commander, Ambassador," a Kazon voice crackled through the communicator. "We've detected multiple approaching lifeforms." Henry and Craxon exchanged a worried glance before rushing back to the ship. They arrived to find the security team in defensive positions, weapons trained on the surrounding terrain. As they watched, strange creatures emerged from the underbrush. They moved on 6 legs, their bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted colors in the alien sunlight. Large, multifaceted eyes regarded the crash site with what appeared to be curiosity. "Hold your fire," Henry commanded, studying the creatures intently. "They don't seem aggressive." A Kazon security officer chittered nervously. "But they're approaching our food stores, Ambassador." Henry's mind raced, searching for a solution that wouldn't harm these fascinating alien lifeforms. His eyes fell on a piece of damaged hull plating, and an idea formed. "Quick," he said, "help me with this." Together, human and Kazon crew members maneuvered the metal sheet into position. Henry then instructed them to strike it with tools, creating a cacophony of sharp metallic sounds. The effect on the creatures was immediate. They recoiled from the noise, their scales flashing rapidly before they retreated into the underbrush. "Remarkable," Craxon said, her antenna twitching with admiration. "A non-lethal solution that respects alien life. You continue to surprise me, Henry." As days passed, the crew made significant progress. The repair team successfully integrated the alien energy source into their systems, boosting their power capabilities beyond their original specifications. This allowed them to send a powerful distress signal towards both Kazonia and Earth. The close quarters and shared challenges led to increased cultural exchange between humans and Kazons. During breaks from repair work, Henry found himself engaged in deep discussions about governance and individual rights with curious Kazon crew members. "You mean, in your system, even the lowest-ranked individual has a say in leadership?" a young Kazon engineer asked, his antenna twitching with fascination. Henry nodded, explaining the basics of democracy and equal rights. The concept seemed to resonate with many of the Kazons, sparking lively debates among the crew. In turn, the Kazons shared their advanced knowledge of xenobiology and space exploration techniques. Human scientists listened in awe as Dr. Zelena explained concepts that would revolutionize their understanding of the universe. However, not everyone was pleased with this exchange. Drazak, a Kazon security officer, grew increasingly agitated by the humans' influence. One evening, he confronted Henry near the alien energy source. "This power should be for Kazon use only?" Drazak hissed, his mandibles clicking aggressively. "You humans have no right to it." Henry stood his ground, acutely aware of the tension building among the crew. "Drazak, we're all in this together. Our best chance of survival and rescue is through cooperation." The standoff was interrupted by Craxon's arrival. She placed herself between Henry and Drazak, her posture radiating authority. "Enough, Drazak. The ambassador speaks the truth. Our strength lies in unity, not division." Drazak's antenna drooped in submission, but Henry could see the conflict wasn't fully grit. He knew he'd need to address these tensions to maintain crew cohesion. A breakthrough came when they established brief contact with Kazonia. The grainy hologram of a Kazon official flickered to life in the ship's communications center. "We've received your distress signal," the official reported. "A rescue mission is being organized, but it will take time to reach your location. Stay strong and know that help is coming." As the transmission ended, a mix of relief and apprehension washed over the crew. They were no longer alone, but survival on this alien moon was far from guaranteed. Henry turned to Craxon, seeing his own complex emotions reflected in her compound eyes. Their shared experiences had brought them closer, but cultural differences and their respective duties still stood between them. The unspoken tension of their growing feelings added another layer of complexity to their already challenging situation. As night fell on the alien moon, Henry stood at the edge of their camp, gazing at the unfamiliar stars above. The challenges ahead were daunting, but he felt a glimmer of hope. Together, humans and Kazons had already accomplished so much. Whatever this strange world had in store for them, he knew they would face it united. Henry's contemplation of the alien stars was interrupted by a sudden, bone-chilling gust of wind. He shivered, pulling his jacket tighter around him. The temperature had been dropping steadily over the past few hours, but this was different. Something was changing. "Ambassador," Dr. Zelana's voice cut through the night air. "We have a problem." Henry hurried to the makeshift command center, where Craxon and Dr. Zelana were huddled around a holographic display of the moon's atmosphere. "The moon's climate is shifting dramatically," Craxon explained, her antenna twitching with concern. "Temperatures are plummeting at an alarming rate." Henry studied the data, his mind racing. "How long do we have before it becomes dangerous?" "Hours, maybe less," Dr. Zelana replied, her compound eyes reflecting the flickering hologram. Henry nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "We need to construct shelters, and fast. Craxon, gather the crew. We're going to need everyone's help." As the crew assembled, Henry outlined his plan. Drawing on his knowledge of Earth's polar expeditions, he proposed a series of interconnected, insulated shelters using materials from both the crashed ship and the alien ruins. "We'll work in teams," Henry explained, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "Each team will focus on a specific task. We need to move quickly, but safely. Our survival depends on it." The crew dispersed, humans and Kazons working side by side with a shared purpose. Henry led a team to salvage insulation materials from the ship, while Kraxon organized a group to gather suitable materials from the ruins. As they worked, Henry couldn't help but notice the seamless cooperation between the two species. A human engineer effortlessly passed tools to his Kazon counterpart, while a Kazon scientist patiently explained complex calculations to her human teammates. Hours passed in a flurry of activity. The temperature continued to drop, their breath forming clouds in the increasingly frigid air. Despite the cold, Henry felt a warmth of pride as he watched the shelters take shape. "Henry!" Kraxon called, her mandibles clicking with excitement. "Dr. Zelana's team has made a discovery in the ruins. You need to see this." They hurried to the excavation site, where Dr. Zelana stood before a newly uncovered chamber. Inside, strange devices hummed with latent energy. "It's some kind of terraforming technology," Dr. Zelana explained, her antenna quivering. "If we can activate it, we might be able to stabilize the moon's climate." Henry's eyes widened as he realized the implications. "This could be the key to our survival," he said, turning to Kraxon, "and it could revolutionize our understanding of planetary engineering." Kraxon nodded, her compound eyes reflecting the soft glow of the alien devices. "We need to focus on understanding this technology. It could be vital for future human-Kazon cooperation." As they examined the terraforming devices, they encountered a series of complex security measures and puzzles. Henry found himself immersed in the challenge, his mind working overtime to decipher the alien logic. "It's like a language," he muttered, tracing the intricate patterns on a control panel. "But instead of words, they use mathematical concepts." Kraxon watched him work, her antenna twitching with admiration. "Your ability to adapt to new concepts is remarkable, Henry," she said softly. Their eyes met, and for a moment the cold and the danger faded away. Henry felt a familiar flutter in his chest, a feeling he'd been trying to ignore since their crash landing. The moment was broken by a sharp beep from the control panel. The devices hummed to life, energy pulsing through conduits that spread throughout the ruins. "We did it!" Dr. Zelana exclaimed, her mandibles clicking rapidly. "The terraforming process has begun." As they watched, the moon's atmosphere began to shift. The biting cold gradually gave way to a more temperate climate. Plants, long dormant, began to sprout from the rocky ground. But their relief was short-lived. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and strange, muffled sounds echoed from deep underground. "Something's coming," Kraxon said, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. Suddenly, the ground erupted as massive serpentine creatures burst from beneath the surface. Their bodies were covered in icy scales, and their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. They must have been in hibernation, Henry realized. The climate change woke them up. The creatures, disorientated and aggressive, began to attack the camp. Henry sprung into action, organizing a defense team. "Use the sonic emitters," he shouted, remembering their effectiveness against the previous alien life forms. "And aim for their eyes. They look sensitive to light." The battle was intense but brief. Human tactical thinking combined with Kazon technology proved a formidable combination. Soon the creatures retreated, disappearing back into the depths of the moon. As the dust settled, Henry found himself standing next to Kraxon, both breathing heavily from the exertion. "We make a good team," Kraxon said, her antenna gently brushing against Henry's arm. Henry nodded, acutely aware of her closeness. "We do," he agreed, his voice soft. Their moment was interrupted by a shout from the communications center. "Ambassador! Commander! We've established contact with Kazonia and Earth." They rushed to the command center, where a holographic display showed representatives from both worlds. "A joint rescue mission has been launched," the Earth representative announced, "but it will take several days to reach your location." As the transmission ended, a debate erupted among the crew. Some argued for immediate departure using their repaired ship and the alien technology, while others urged caution. Henry raised his hand, silencing the arguments. "We have a unique opportunity here," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "We can use this time to fully understand and document the alien technology. It's a chance to bring back knowledge that could change both our worlds." His proposal was met with nods of agreement from both humans and Kazans. As the crew set to work, Henry caught Craxon's eye. She smiled, her mandibles clicking softly. "You continue to impress me, Henry," she said. "Your leadership has brought our people together in ways I never thought possible." Henry felt a surge of emotion, but before he could respond, they were called away to oversee the research efforts. As they walked side by side, Henry knew that their time on this alien moon was coming to an end. Soon they would return to their respective worlds, leaving behind not just a wealth of scientific knowledge, but also the bonds they had formed. The future was uncertain, filled with both promise and challenges. But as Henry looked at Craxon, he knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Together, united in their shared purpose and growing bond. The next few days passed in a flurry of activity as the crew worked tirelessly to document and understand the alien technology. Henry and Craxon coordinated the efforts, their leadership styles complementing each other perfectly. However, their progress was suddenly interrupted by a series of alarming tremors that shook the moon's surface. Dr. Zelana burst into the command center, her antenna quivering with urgency. "Ambassador, Commander, the terraforming technology is malfunctioning." Henry and Craxon exchanged worried glances before rushing to the holographic display. The image showed chaotic patterns of energy coursing through the moon's crust. "The climate stabilization is failing," Craxon observed, her compound eyes reflecting the flickering data. "We're seeing rapid environmental shift." As if on cue, a violent gust of wind howled outside, followed by a sudden downpour. Through the command center's viewport, they watched as the landscape transformed before their eyes. Lush vegetation withered and died, replaced by crystalline formations that grew at an alarming rate. Henry's mind raced. "We need to investigate the source of this malfunction. Dr. Zelana, assemble a team. We're going back to the ruins." As they prepared to leave, Craxon placed a hand on Henry's arm. "I'll organize a group to reinforce our shelters. We don't know how bad this will get." Henry nodded, appreciating her foresight. "Good thinking. Stay in constant communication." The expedition team made their way through the rapidly changing terrain, dodging falling debris and navigating newly formed crevasses. Upon reaching the ruins, they discovered a hidden entrance that had been revealed by the seismic activity. "It appears to lead deep underground," Dr. Zelana noted, her scientific curiosity evident in her voice. Henry took a deep breath. "Let's go. We need answers." They descended into the depths of the moon, their way lit by bioluminescent fungi that pulsed in sync with the energy fluctuations. After what felt like hours of careful navigation through winding tunnels, they emerged into a vast chamber that took their breath away. At the center stood a colossal structure, pulsing with energy and covered in intricate glowing symbols. It was unmistakably a supercomputer of alien design. "Incredible," Dr. Zelana whispered, her antenna twitching with excitement. "This must be the central control system for the entire moon." Henry approached the main console, his eyes widening as he realized the implications. "The terraforming technology we activated, it must have awakened this system." As they worked to interface with the alien computer, Henry's communicator crackled to life. Craxon's voice came through, tinged with urgency. "Henry, the situation up here is deteriorating rapidly. We're experiencing extreme weather patterns and seismic events. How's your progress?" "We've found the source," Henry replied, his fingers flying over the alien controls as Dr. Zelana fed him information. "It's a supercomputer, Craxon. It's trying to reset the moon's environment to its original state." "Can you stop it?" Henry exchanged a glance with Dr. Zelana. "We're trying, but this system is incredibly complex. We need more time." "Time may be something we don't have," Craxon responded, her voice grim. "The repair team reports that these conditions are damaging our ship. If this continues, we may lose our only means of escape. The gravity of the situation hit Henry like a physical blow. They were faced with an impossible choice: risk being stranded on this increasingly hostile moon, or attempt a potentially disastrous emergency launch. As Henry grappled with this dilemma, Dr. Zalana made a startling discovery. Ambassador, this computer contains a vast database of the ancient civilization's knowledge, including advanced propulsion technology. Henry's heart raced at the implications. Such knowledge could revolutionize space travel for both humans and Kazons, but attempting to download it would further delay their departure, increasing the risk from both the environmental hazards and... His thoughts were interrupted by another transmission, this time from the makeshift sensor array they had constructed. "Unknown ship detected entering the system," reported a nervous human technician. It's Kazon in design, but not matching any known friendly signatures." Craxton's voice cut in, tense and urgent. "It's an extremist vessel. I recognize the configuration. They must have been hiding in the system, waiting for an opportunity." Henry's mind whirled, processing this new threat. They were now caught between the proverbial rock and a hard place, the malfunctioning moon threatening their immediate survival, and an approaching enemy that could spell doom for their entire mission. In that moment, an idea struck him. It was risky, potentially sacrificial, but it might be their only chance. "Craxton, gather the crew. I have a plan, but everyone needs to hear it. We're heading back up." As they ascended from the alien facility, Henry outlined his strategy to Dr. Zalana. By the time they reached the surface where the rest of the crew had assembled in their reinforced main shelter, he was ready to present their options. "We have 3 challenges," Henry began, his voice steady despite the chaos outside: the malfunctioning terraforming system, our damaged ship, and an approaching enemy vessel. "I propose we tackle all 3 with one solution." He explained his plan to reprogram the alien supercomputer to create a temporary window of stable conditions, allowing for a safe launch. However, this would require someone to remain behind in the facility to manually operate the system during the launch window. As murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled crew, Drazak stepped forward, his mandibles set in a determined expression. "I volunteer," he stated, surprising everyone. I wish to make amends for my earlier behavior. Let me do this for our united crew." The offer hung in the air, a testament to how far they had come as a team. Henry nodded solemnly, acknowledging Drazak's bravery. "There's more," Henry continued. "The alien database contains invaluable knowledge, including advanced propulsion technology. We have a chance to secure this information, but it will delay our departure and increase our risk." The crew exchanged glances, the weight of the decision palpable in the air. Their choice would not only determine their fate, but potentially alter the future of human-Kazon relations and interstellar travel. As the debate began, Henry caught Craxton's eye across the room. In that shared look, they communicated volumes: their concern for the crew, the weight of leadership, and the unspoken depth of their feelings for each other. With a silent nod, they moved to the center of the room, ready to guide their people through this critical juncture. Whatever they decided, they would face it together, their choices shaping not only their own futures, but the course of interstellar cooperation for generations to come. The air crackled with tension as Henry prepared to outline the next phase of their plan, acutely aware that every second counted in their race against time, nature, and an encroaching enemy. "Threat." Henry took a deep breath, steadying himself before addressing the crew. "We have a chance to secure knowledge that could change the course of both our civilizations," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "But it comes at a great risk. We must delay our departure to download the alien database." Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled crew. Craxton stepped forward, her antenna twitching with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "The potential benefits outweigh the immediate danger," she added, supporting Henry's decision. "We cannot pass up this opportunity." With the decision made, the crew sprang into action. Dr. Zalana led a team back to the alien facility, their footsteps echoing through the corridors as they raced against time. The download process began, complex streams of data flowing from the ancient supercomputer to their makeshift storage devices. The system architecture is unlike anything I've ever seen, Dr. Zalana reported, her fingers flying over the alien interface. We're having to reconfigure our equipment on the fly. As they worked, the moon's instability increased. The ground shook violently, nearly knocking them off their feet. Crystal formations erupted from the floor, narrowly missing the team members. Back at the main camp, Henry coordinated the defense preparations. He hunched over a holographic display, studying the incoming data on the approaching extremist ship. "They're using an elliptical approach vector," he muttered, tracing the ship's path with his finger, "trying to use the moon's gravitational field to mask their approach." He turned to a mixed group of human and Kazan engineers. "We need to repurpose the alien sensor array. If we can boost its range, we might be able to use the moon's instability to our advantage." The team set to work, cannibalizing parts from their own equipment to enhance the alien technology. Sparks flew as they spliced incompatible systems together, the air filled with a cacophony of human and Kazan technical jargon. Meanwhile, Kraxon led the efforts to modify their damaged spacecraft. The hangar bay was a hive of activity, with crew members scrambling over the hull, integrating salvaged alien components into the ship's systems. "Reroute the power from the auxiliary thrusters," Kraxon ordered, her voice raised over the din of welding and hammering. "We need to channel it through the new propulsion matrix." A human engineer looked up from a tangle of wires, his face smeared with grease. "But that'll overload the existing power grid." "Then we'll build a new one," Kraxon replied without hesitation. "Use the alien power cells we salvaged. We need every edge we can get." As the frantic preparations continued, a harsh voice crackled over their communication system. "Attention, human and Kazan traders. This is Commander Zargax of the Kazan Supremacy. Surrender immediately and hand over all alien technology, or face annihilation." Henry exchanged a glance with Kraxon before responding. "This is Ambassador Henry. We're experiencing some technical difficulties down here, Commander. Perhaps we could discuss this like reasonable beings?" Zargax's laugh was cold and mirthless. "You have 1 hour to comply, Ambassador. After that, we will take what we want from your corpses." The transmission cut off abruptly. Henry turned to Kraxon, his expression grim. "That buys us some time, but not much. How are the ship modifications coming?" Before Kraxon could respond, the ground heaved violently. Alarms blared throughout the compound as new fissures opened in the moon's surface, venting superheated gases. "Drazak!" Henry shouted into his communicator. "What's happening down there?" In the alien facility, Drazak's fingers danced over the controls, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "The system is becoming increasingly unstable. The download process is putting immense strain on the terraforming controls. I'm barely keeping it contained." Dr. Zalana's voice cut in, tinged with excitement despite the chaos. "We've broken through another firewall. Ambassador, the data we're accessing, it's beyond our wildest expectations. Theoretical physics, energy manipulation techniques we've never even dreamed of." A series of explosions rocked the compound. Henry rushed to the viewport, his heart sinking as he saw the extremist ship launching a barrage of energy weapons. "They're testing our defenses," Kraxon observed, joining him at the window, "probing for weaknesses." Henry nodded grimly. "And we're running out of time to find a way out of this mess." As if in response to his words, Dr. Zalana's voice crackled over the comms once more, this time filled with panic. "Ambassador, the download has triggered some kind of failsafe. The entire system is initiating a purge sequence. We have minutes before it wipes everything, and possibly destroys the whole facility." Henry's mind raced, weighing their options in a split second. "Start the evacuation. Get everyone to the ship. Drazak, can you buy us any more time?" There was a moment of silence before Drazak responded, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I can override the purge sequence manually, but someone will have to stay behind to maintain it." The implications of Drazak's words hung heavy in the air. Before Henry could respond, Kraxon grabbed his arm, her compound eyes reflecting the flashes of weapons fire outside. "Henry, we need to go, now." With a heavy heart, Henry gave the order. All personnel, evacuate immediately to the ship. Prepare for emergency launch. As the crew scrambled towards their sole means of escape, the extremist forces began their landing approach. Henry found himself organizing a rearguard action, using his tactical training to coordinate a defense against the incoming Kazan warriors. Use the unstable terrain to your advantage, he shouted, ducking behind a crystalline formation as energy bolts sizzled past. Force them into the fissures. The battle was chaotic and brutal. Human and Kazan crew members fought side by side, their earlier mistrust forgotten in the face of a common enemy. Henry found himself in the thick of the fighting, his diplomatic skills replaced by combat training he hoped he'd never have to use. As they fell back towards the ship, Craxon's voice came over the comms. The modifications are complete. We're ready for launch, but the atmospheric conditions are too unstable. In the alien facility, Drazak made his decision. I can create a stable corridor for launch, but only for a few moments. You'll have to time it perfectly. Henry, covered in sweat and moon dust, fought his way back to the ship's entrance. Do it, Drazak, and thank you. The ship's engines roared to life, the hull vibrating with the combination of alien and familiar technology. As the last of the crew boarded, Henry and Craxon took their positions at the helm. All crew secure for emergency launch, Craxon announced, her voice steady despite the chaos. Outside, the moon's surface was a maelstrom of energy discharges and gravitational anomalies. The extremist forces pressed their attack, their ships closing in for the kill. Henry's hands tightened on the controls. Drazak, we're ready. Give us a window. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a corridor of calm appeared in the turbulent atmosphere above them, a final gift from their former adversary turned ally. Now! Henry yelled, pushing the engines to their limit. The ship rocketed upwards, straining against gravity in the last desperate attacks of the extremists. As they burst through the upper atmosphere, Henry allowed himself a moment of hope. But their ordeal was nowhere near the end. The extremist ship loomed before them, weapons charged and ready to finish what they had started on the moon's surface. Henry and Craxon exchanged a determined look. With the fate of two species and the future of space travel itself hanging in the balance, they prepared to face this final challenge head-on. The ship lurched violently as it rocketed upwards, straining against the moon's gravitational pull. Henry's knuckles turned white as he gripped the controls, his eyes darting between the view screen and the array of alien-enhanced instrumentation before him. Shields at 60% and falling, Craxon reported, her fingers dancing across the console. The atmospheric turbulence is more severe than anticipated. A series of explosions rocked the vessel, nearly throwing them from their seats. Through the view screen, they watched as the alien facility began to collapse, great plumes of crystalline dust billowing into the air. Drazak, Henry whispered, a pang of guilt piercing his chest. There was no time for mourning. The ship shuddered again as they broke through the upper atmosphere, the inky blackness of space replacing the chaotic swirl of gases and debris. Their brief moment of relief was shattered by a barrage of weapons fire. Zargax's ship loomed before them, its massive form blotting out the stars. Evasive maneuvers, Henry shouted, wrenching the controls to port. The ship responded sluggishly, its systems still adapting to the alien modifications. Craxon's antenna twitched as she rerouted power. Diverting energy to the port shields. It won't hold for long. Henry's mind raced, searching for a strategy. The space around them was littered with debris from the disintegrating moon, creating a deadly obstacle course. He banked hard, weaving between chunks of rock and crystal. What are you doing? Craxon asked, her compound eyes wide. Using the debris field to our advantage, Henry replied through gritted teeth. They can't get a clean shot if we stay in the thick of it. A stray projectile clipped their starboard wing, sending them into a wild spin. Henry fought to regain control, his arms straining against the G-forces. Suddenly, a holographic display flickered to life before them, bathing the cockpit in an eerie blue glow. Strange symbols and diagrams danced across the projection. What is that? Henry asked, struggling to focus on both the new display and their pursuers. Craxon leaned forward, her antenna quivering with excitement. It's some kind of propulsion system interface. I think the alien technology is revealing new capabilities. As they deciphered the alien script, realization dawned on both their faces. A teleportation device, they said in unison. A warning klaxon blared. On the display, they watched as Zargax's ship charged its main cannon, the weapon glowing with ominous energy. Now or never, Henry said, his hand hovering over the newly revealed control. Klaxon nodded. Do it! Henry slammed his palm onto the alien interface. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world around them seemed to stretch and distort. A blinding flash of light engulfed them, and Henry felt a sensation of both weightlessness and immense pressure. When his vision cleared, the view screen showed empty space. Zargax's ship was nowhere to be seen. It worked, Klaxon exclaimed, checking their position. We've jumped several thousand kilometers. Henry allowed himself a moment of relief before refocusing on the task at hand. They'll be confused, but not for long. We need to use this advantage. As if in response to his words, another holographic display sprang to life, this one showing a complex schematic of their ship's weapon systems. The alien database, Klaxon said, her voice filled with awe. It's integrating with our systems, showing us how to reconfigure our weapons. Henry's fingers flew over the controls, following the alien instructions. He felt the ship hum with newfound power as the weapons came online. There! Klaxon pointed to a blip on their sensor display. Zargax's ship had reoriented and was closing fast. Henry took a deep breath, lining up the shot. The targeting computer chirped, confirming a lock. He pressed the firing control. A beam of energy, unlike anything they had ever seen, lanced out from their ship. It struck Zargax's vessel with surgical precision, bypassing its shields and striking its engines. The massive ship listed to one side, its weapons and propulsion systems going dark. Direct hit, Klaxon cheered. They're disabled, not destroyed. Henry nodded grimly. Let's hope that's the end of it. Set a course for... His words were cut off by a blinding flash from behind them. They turned to see the unstable moon collapsing in on itself, the malfunctioning terraforming system finally reaching critical failure. The implosion created a shockwave that buffeted their ship, pushing them further into space. As the light faded, Henry and Klaxon exchanged a look of mingled relief and sadness. The alien facility, with all its secrets, was gone. So too was any trace of Drazak and the extremist forces. Plot a course for Kazonia, Henry said softly. It's time we went home. As their ship sped through the void, the immediate danger behind them, the crew began the monumental task of sifting through the alien data they had acquired. Dr. Zelana's excited voice filled the ship's comm system as she reported on breakthrough after breakthrough. The implications are staggering, she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. The aliens' understanding of spatial dynamics alone could revolutionize our approach to faster-than-light travel, and their energy production techniques. We could solve our resource shortages within a generation. Henry listened to the reports with growing amazement. The cost had been high, but the potential benefits to both human and Kazan societies were beyond measure. Days passed as they journeyed towards Kazan space. Henry and Klaxon spent long hours on the bridge, discussing the future that lay before them. The challenges they had faced together had forged a bond between them that transcended their biological differences. As they approached the outer reaches of Kazan territory, their long-range sensors detected a fleet of ships approaching. It's a joint human-Kazan task force, Klaxon announced, relief evident in her voice. The comm system crackled to life, and a familiar voice filled the bridge. Ambassador Henry, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Fleet. It's good to see you're in one piece. We've been searching for weeks. Henry smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility lift slightly from his shoulders. It's good to be found, Admiral. We have one hell of a story to tell you. As they docked with the fleet's flagship, Henry turned to Klaxon. The Kazan stood tall and proud, her compound eyes reflecting the starlight. Ready to change the world? He asked. Klaxon's mandibles clicked in what Henry had come to recognize as a smile. Worlds, Henry. Plural. Together, they stepped off their battered ship, prepared to face the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The future of human-Kazan relations, and perhaps the entire galaxy, had been irrevocably altered by their journey. As they walked side by side towards the waiting dignitaries, both knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.